Will the meeting of March 5th, 2019 of the Public Service Commission please come to order? Before we get started, I do want to make an introduction. We have a new person with us from Delmarva, Diane Goff. There she is. She's the new manager of regulatory affairs for Delmarva. Thank you, Marissa, for the information.
Thank you.
All right, first thing on the agenda is the reading of the minutes for February 14th, both the public and executive session. Are there any questions on the minutes? Any corrections?
Madam Chair, I move that the Commission adopt the minutes, the public and the executive session as submitted.
I second.
Okay, any questions on the motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. There are 3 items on the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions or comments on those 3 items, or would you like to have any of them moved?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I may, these are the first time testimonies by one of our new staff members. If you have any questions for Renee Edge.
All right, everybody, we all have to have a question. Welcome, Renee Edge. Okay.
So I move to adopt the consent agenda.
I second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? There being none, the motion carries. Now we're on to the regular agenda. And I think I just threw one of the items away. The first item on the agenda is in the matter of the review of customer choice in the state of Delaware. We should have an update from the parties. We have Matt Cardigan for staff, I believe.
Thank you, Madam Acting Chair. Pinch hitting for Mr. Geddes today. I'll just have a few brief comments and then turn it over to Delmarva for the bulk of the comments. But last August, in Order 9220, the Commission approved some portions of the customer choice docket and asked for an update 6 months after the fact on how we're doing with the other items in the docket, specifically the purchase of receivables program, electric supplier inserts, and the supplier choice website. So I'll only speak today regarding the website. The staff has made some changes to the website where now if customers go to the choice portion of our website, there are links directly to the electric suppliers' websites, so it makes it a little bit easier for them. We're not planning any further changes at this time because of the cost and resource issues that we discussed with you previously. Regarding seamless moves, instant connects, and enroll with your wallet, you may recall that we had tabled those until we found out what the Maryland Public Service Commission was going to do. There's a similar docket occurring in Maryland. Maryland has denied some portion or version of seamless moves and instant connects. They've referred that back to a working group to revise. There's been no proposal yet for Enroll with your wallet, but we expect that in the future. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Delmarva to discuss the POR program in more detail.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you,
wanna go
Matt.
ahead?
I just wanted to thank the Commission for allowing us to present today. Diane is going to do the presentation on behalf of the company. We're happy to have her on board. She's been working with Delmarva for about 20 years in different capacities, and we're glad that she's joining the regulatory department. So thank you.
Sorry, too many times. I'm good. I'm
You get her
good.
in stereo. Here, one of these.
As Matt had said, that the order was approved in last August, and we had requested 12 months to implement purchase of Receivable. We're happy to report that we are ahead of schedule. We're planning to implement it on June 1st. I'm sorry? Okay. All right, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so this is something that we tend to do in utilities, is we forget that the rest of the world doesn't know how weird we are in our business sometimes. So I thought maybe I should remind you what purchase of receivables are, because you don't have to deal with this every day. So a lot of jurisdictions have a process, and we have the same process in Maryland. So we've already done it. We have experience with it, and so we were very supportive of it. Delmarva was. And what we will be doing is purchasing the receivables of the choice providers. Why? We already do collections for all of our distribution customers, right? So we're already out there doing it, and we're collecting for SOS. So it's wise for us to be the ones that do that, because the theory is, as the choice providers have told us, that's one less thing they'd have to do, and as a result, reduces their costs, will hopefully reduces their risk dramatically, and will hopefully, one, encourage more of them to come to Delaware, and two, encourage them to provide a lower price. So we will provide it at a discount rate, right? We figure out what percentage is never recovered. We base it on our SOS rate, and so they get, I'm just making up a number, instead of getting $1 for every dollar, they get 99 cents for every dollar. And that's the purchase of receivables. That's the theory, and we agreed to it. The hearing examiner recommended it, and you approved it. And one of the many great things about Diane Goff is that before she came over to regulatory, she was the czar of the billing system and has done purchase of receivables in other jurisdictions. So she is definitely the person to describe it to you.
Thank you. Are you in charge of the slides?
You gonna let me work technology? Great. No, I can do it for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. As I had mentioned, hopefully this is good.
You have a question from Commissioner.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Please speak,
Oh, I'm
like,
sorry.
really bring it in close.
Okay, thank you.
We're told that they can't hear on the phone unless
Thank you so much.
really eating you.
As we mentioned a few seconds ago, the purchase of receivables was approved in Order 9220 in August 21st, 2018. The 6-month update was requested, and we have had preliminary meetings on January 31st with staff, DPA, and Risa to provide them an update of our status and let them know that we were planning to implement it on June 1st. We then had a second meeting on February 12th to review the format of our initial filing, which we'll speak about in another minute. Again, the topics that we knew needed to be addressed today, and Matt covered the last two of them, was the purchase of receivable, supplier bill inserts, the alternatives to the PSC website, and then the topics being discussed in Maryland of Enroll with Your Wallet, Seamless Move, and Instant Connect. As far as the schedule, we have begun work. We are on schedule to implement June 1st. There is a transition plan, which we have included highlights of in the appendix. It was outlined in the hearing examiner's report, and our supplier relations organization will be communicating with the third-party suppliers as we get closer to implementation, and we'll be dealing with them. It's a 90-day transition period, and we'll be communicating with them regularly during that 90 days. From a cost perspective, we had estimated the cost would be between $150,000 and $200,000 for our program development. At this point, based on our progress to date, we do expect to come in on the lower side of that. And as agreed to in the hearing examiner's report, that will be amortized over 5 years.
And that is part of the discount rate, by the way. Our customers will not pay for that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
That's okay.
Pardon me, could I inject a question
Yes.
here for just a second? So it says purchase of receivables in the beginning of your presentation, then I see purchase or receivables moving through it. Is that,
No, it's purchase of.
okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
The next slide is about our initial filing.
I think you have another question.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Interesting about these receivables purchases. Are you going to talk about any projections for income to offset these costs? And have you projected out what the program will?
What our discount rate is?
And what's your discount rate? Yeah.
We have not yet, and that's the initial filing we'll be doing at the end of March, that There are several components to that filing, and we do not yet have finalized numbers. The hearing examiner's report requested that we have the test period for 12 months ending 3 months before. So our test period is March 1st, 2018 till February 28, 2019. So it just ended a few days ago, and we don't have those numbers compiled yet.
One more question. Are the collection rates for these different companies, do they vary widely?
As far as how the third-party suppliers do, or
Right, the third-party suppliers, are their collection rates, like, is there a disparity there?
we
Are
wouldn't
some
know
80%
that.
and some, okay, they
Yeah,
haven't,
we don't know that.
okay.
So when we're calculating the discount rate for the first year, we're using SOS as a proxy, and that was discussed in the hearing examiner's report. And then it'll be subject to true-up each year. So as we go through each year, there will be a little bit of a lag because we're starting with kind of a clean balance in June. And until those are written off, it would accumulate, customer terminate it, and then ultimately written off. There will be a lag, but we will be using our SOS experience as a proxy.
Thank you.
And our experience in other jurisdictions helps us as well. Sorry.
And again, we have reviewed the initial filing format with staff, DPA, and Risa. And then inclusions into this calculation are the uncollectibles. And as we discussed for first year, it'll be based on SOS, and it is by rate class. And then the program development amortization, which Todd had mentioned on the prior page. And then any under collection that kicks in year 2. And any related interest, which is limited, from the order. And then the exclusion to the calculation is late payment fees, which was itemized again in the hearing examiner's report.
And that just means that late payment fees paid by customers who pay late will remain with our customers. They won't be credited to the discount rate. Some states allow late payment fees to go to the suppliers by increasing or decreasing their discount rate.
Reducing the discount rate.
Yeah, but in Delaware, we obviously think you made the right decision on that, which is they have no late payments, right? They don't exist anymore because the utility buys them. And so we believe that the late payment fees paid by late paying customers should go to offset costs, so it reduces rates for customers. And it is now credited to the uncollectibles portion of the distribution fee, and it's going to stay that way in Delaware. So our customers will continue to get the full benefit of late paying customers' late payment fees.
One question on the late payment transaction. Is it going to be the Delmarva or the choice supplier that will be in the position of collecting the late fee?
It will
or
be
going to
Delmarva.
the customer?
It will be Delmarva.
We'll have all collection responsibilities once we purchase, and that was one of the sticking points. Is then we believed our customers, staff supported this, DPA strongly supported this. Then it is our customers who should get the benefit of late payment fees. It shouldn't go to the benefit of those who will never see late payments again. And that was a decision that you made back then too, and I know our customers appreciate it.
Are there any other questions on the purchase of receivables and their filing? Okay, so we expect to, again, recap to file March 31st with an effective date of June 1. And then the other remaining topic was the supplier, our ability to do supplier inserts at their request and paid for by the collaborative suppliers who have requested it. And we have had no requests since Order 9220 was issued. And the other two topics Matt had covered earlier.
And we'll be very happy to, any other questions you have, if you want updates as we go, I'm sure your staff will let us know, and we'll be happy to provide them.
Can you tell me where you are on 3-day switching?
So 3-day switching has been implemented in Delaware.
Okay, because we've had some, we can talk offline, but
Okay.
we've had some calls where they said it would still take a couple months, and so it was our understanding 3-day switching was already done, and yet the customer rep had said it would take a couple months. I'll
Okay, yeah,
share
let's
them with
talk.
you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say thank you, Ms. Goff, for your first presentation to the
Thank you.
Public Service Commission. Good luck with the implementation of the program.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to working with everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Gina, you have anything to add on this one?
No.
Okay. All right, item number 2 on the irregular agenda, in the matter of the application of Chesapeake Utilities Corporation for approval to implement a weather normalization adjustment. This is the order that will open the docket. Mr. O'Brien from Chesapeake.
Thank you, Madam Acting Chair and Commissioners. And thank you for pushing this matter from last meeting's agenda so that I could participate in the discussion. I'm Bill O'Brien on behalf of Chesapeake Utilities. We also have Matt Evergam with us, Manager of Rates and Regulatory Affairs. In late January, Chesapeake filed an application for approval of a weather normalization adjustment rider. Today, you have the opening order for that application in front of you for consideration. As we're sure you've noticed, you have 2 competing forms of order to choose from. To put the arguments you'll hear today in context, I'll give you a quick summary of the Weather Normalization Adjustment, or WNA. The WNA is not a novel concept. As noted in our application, we have similar adjustments in our other jurisdictions, and at least 27 states have approved these types of bill stabilization mechanisms. In a nutshell, the WNA stabilizes customers' bills from the impact of weather volatility. So in a colder than normal winter, the bills would be lower than they otherwise would be, and in a warmer than normal winter, the bills would be higher than they otherwise would be, but still lower than what they would be under normal winter conditions. So the WNA simply smooths out some of the volatility of the customer's bills due to weather variations. So let's look at the 2 orders. The company's proposed form of order opens the docket, assigns a hearing examiner, sets an intervention deadline, and directs the company to publish notice of the filing. That's typically all you hear me say or anyone say about an opening order. But today you have an alternative form of order from the public advocate and staff that would expand the scope of this docket beyond a consideration of the WNA application. All right, let's go to the staff and DPA order. If you go to page 2, in ordering paragraph 4, the first sentence, at the end of that sentence, that's where the language is that we have the dispute over. So let me just go ahead and read you the pertinent parts of that sentence. Glenn Canton is designated as the hearing examiner to schedule and conduct such public comment sessions and evidentiary hearings as may be necessary to have a full and complete record concerning the justness and reasonableness of the proposed WNA rider. Now here comes the disputed language. As well as the effects of a WNA rider, the DSIC, Chesapeake's current rate of return, and customer growth on the company's return on equity and overall rate of return. So we would review in this case the effect of 4 items on the company's ROE and ROR. So again, the 4 items are the WNA rider, the DSIC, Chesapeake's current rate of return, and customer growth. Now, we certainly don't have an issue with looking at the WNA's effect on ROE, if there is any. That at least arguably relates to the application. But the impact of the other 3 items on the company's ROE has no business being in this case. To be clear, the staff and DPA order doesn't say that we'll look at the impact of those items on the WNA. It says we'll look at their impact on the company's ROE, or return on equity. So let's take a look at them one at a time. First is the DSIC. They would like to ask whether the DSIC has an effect on the company's ROE and ROR. Well, for one thing, the company doesn't have a DSIC yet. But more importantly, when we do ask for a DSIC, we will be looking at the company's ROE at that time. And how do I know that? Well, the DSIC law itself directs the PSC to look at the DSIC's effects on the company's returns and directs the PSC to revoke the DSIC in subsequent quarters if the company is over-earning. So the legislature has already addressed the D6 effect on the ROE. If you're over-earning, then your D6 goes away. So why are we talking about it now in this case? Let's take a look at the next item. The effect of the company's current rate of return on the company's return on equity and overall rate of return. Now, I know Mr. Canton is a very smart person, but I'm not sure he's going to know what that means from reading that language. Now, based on our discussions relating to this order, we think we know what it means. But I'd rather not spend several minutes on that and then find out later that we were a little off. So I'd like to just object to that language as vague and reserve a few minutes of argument to respond to staff and DPA's points about why that item is necessary to this case. All right, the final item, customer growth. The effect of customer growth on the company's ROE and ROR. Again, you didn't hear me say WNA. Now, we could talk your ears off about how customer growth sometimes may help earnings, sometimes may hurt earnings, depending on the timing of the expansion projects and the situation itself. But what is the point of discussing that in this case? For the sake of argument, let's just say that customer growth helps earnings at all times in all situations. And let's say for the sake of argument that the company has killer growth. If customer growth causes the company to over-earn, then the Commission can call the company in for a rate case under Section 309 of Title 26. So let me say that again. If customer growth causes the company to over-earn, the Commission can call the company in for a rate case, whether or not the company has a WNA. And how would we know if customer growth has caused us to over-earn? Well, that's why we file quarterly rate of return reports, which show our current realized rate of return. So if you see that we're over-earning due to customer growth or for any other reason, you can call us in for a rate case. So why are we talking about customer growth at all, let alone in conjunction with our WNA application? Just like with the DSIC, the legislature has already addressed the effects of this item on ROE by allowing the Commission to call us in for a rate case if our quarterly rate of return show that customer growth has caused us to over-earn. So for these reasons, we ask that you adopt the company's proposed order, which simply does what opening orders typically do. It opens the case to consider the company's application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Mr. Walsh, for staff?
Thank you, Madam Acting Chair, Commissioners. I am sorry. Thank you, Madam Acting Chair and Commissioners. Tom Walsh on behalf of staff. I will try to address Mr. O'Brien's arguments in like order. I want to start by noting some of the language. This is not an alternative form of order. This is a more complete form of order. It is more complete and appropriate because it puts in this hearing for the hearing examiner in an evidentiary hearing all of the components that should be heard within this WNA rider. Not doing so is akin to the facetious saying, why do today what you can put off till tomorrow? This has to do with today, this WNA rider, and it does affect these different components. Mr. O'Brien had used the phrase expand beyond the scope. Again, this is within the scope. If this rider has an interplay and should be addressed as stated in the whereas clause in conjunction with the effects of which customer growth, rate of return, current rate of return, and recently enacted DSIC will have on Chesapeake's return on equity and overall rate of return. If that is the case, and it is, I don't think Mr. O'Brien argues differently, then it should be heard at the evidentiary hearing before the hearing examiner. The fact that the Commission can call Chesapeake in for rate case seems reactive, and this is something that ought to be done proactive. He mentioned that it has no business here. Again, clearly this is the business, and the hearing examiner, I would agree with Mr. O'Brien, hearing examiner Canton is a very smart individual, and I have no doubt that he will understand return, rate of return, as well as any of the parties or their counsel involved. The customer growth, again, Mr. Bryan relies on the statutory ability of the commission to call the company in for rate of return. Again, that goes to something that's reactive. We can get this on the record now, and if it's better for the ratepayers to have it in an evidentiary hearing now and have it prepped in waiting, I guess, for a rate case, should that happen, then it's better to have that record now. The DSIC, he mentioned that there would be no DSIC if they're over-earning. We want to find out what this weather normalization adjustment does to earning now. And the DSIC bill was passed, as we know. We should have those numbers in an evidentiary hearing. And again, tee those up, be proactive, not reactive. And it's certainly within the Commission's authority. This is certainly not beyond any scope. It's not an alternative form. What staff and the Division of the Public Advocate is asking is that we be thorough and inclusive, and our form of order does so. I'm sure Ms. Iori has some additional comments, so I will hand over the baton. Staff, of course, ask the Commission to approve our form of the Order 9342. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Iori.
Thank you, Madam Acting Chair and Commissioners. Regina Iori, Deputy Attorney General for the Division of the Public Advocate. I don't have a lot to add to what Mr. Walsh said. Obviously, we agree with staff since we are submitting, we have bonded with them with the proposed form of order. But I just have I guess a couple of things. One, Chesapeake argues that this is beyond the scope, what we have asked for, and this is beyond the scope of their application. But this commission is not constrained in issuing an order by what the company has contained in its application. I think you all may be familiar with Scott Hempling. He's a pretty well-known regulatory attorney. And it was interesting, I just happened to, when I was in on Saturday, this was in my inbox. He publishes a monthly essay, and in this particular March 2019 essay, he said, "In commission land, a party's filing is stimulation but not limitation. The commission can add issues, combine proceedings, invite the appearance of other parties, or convert a two-party complaint into multi-party rate making, all as the public interest demands. We would suggest to you that the WNA rider cannot be considered in a vacuum, and that the effect that it is going to have on these other issues that staff and the DPA have identified in their proposed form of order is and or should be considered in this application. So you are not limited just by what the company filed." Let's see, the code does allow limited issue rate cases. This could be construed as a limited issue rate case, although I don't think that we would be, we're certainly not advocating that this be a full-blown rate case. Now, I'm not sure if I heard Mr. O'Brien correctly. If he said that Chesapeake's not objecting to considering the effect of the rider on the return on equity and overall rate of return, we're delighted to hear that, but their proposed form of order doesn't say that. So at a minimum, if the commission is inclined to go with Chesapeake's proposed form of order, that language should be in there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam Acting Chair. Starting with council's last point first. We think the effects of the WNA rider on return on equity and overall rate of return is in our order. Our order says, review the application. That is an item that relates to the application. By definition, it says the WNA's effect. It's the other three items that don't have language in them relating them at all to the WNA application. That's what it says. There's no way around it. These other three things are not related back to the WNA rider in this form of order. You know, another thing, certainly the commission is not constrained. The commission can put out an order that it wants to put out. But is this the procedure that we want to follow in opening orders? Is this, you know, the battleground for substantive issues moving forward? Or do we just want to open a docket to consider the application and move forward? You know, it was last year that we filed the application having to do with the acquisition of those propane community gas systems. We file the application. Together, the parties start working on it, and we identify a threshold issue that needs to be resolved before we spend hundreds of hours on a case. So one of the parties files a motion to dismiss. We come in here, we brief it, we talk about it. The commission agreed with the motion to dismiss. The case was withdrawn, and we move forward. I mean, that's the procedure that we follow here at the commission so that the commissioners can be briefed on these substantive issues. That was a case where the opening order simply opened the docket to consider the application, and then we moved forward. Here, it seems like we're now trying to bake these substantive issues into the opening order itself, at least baking certain people's positions into the opening order, which we don't agree with. Now, all the talk about the return on equity we think is just a distraction. This application is a revenue-neutral filing for rate-making purposes. Rates are set based on weather-normalized revenues or sales. This case is revenue-neutral based on normalized sales. So it's not a rate case. It should have no effect on return on equity. But those are the types of things that we'll argue in the case itself if there's a dispute there. We shouldn't be doing it with an opening order.
Do you have something you want to add?
Oh, I do.
I have a feeling Ms. Iwery is going to cover the point, so I would be happy to allow her to go first.
I would beg to differ that this is that these additional issues aren't a distraction. They are, granted, your normal opening order does not address, because it usually just opens it, it opens the proceeding. Here, however, I disagree that it is revenue neutral. Many of the commissions that have considered these types of riders have found that it reduces risk. And how does it reduce risk? Because it does, as you heard Mr. O'Brien say, reduces the volatility. A reduction of volatility is a reduction of risk. So again, he also said that their proposed order contains language that says the effect on the ROE and overall rate of return could be considered. It does not. It says, as may be necessary to have a full and complete record concerning the justness and reasonableness of the proposed WNA rider and tariff modifications. That is, considering it in a vacuum, without the effect that it may have on the return on equity and overall rate of return. Thank you.
I would just add that this is not an opening, I don't believe there is an opening order that sets out the parties' positions and creates the battlefield. The purpose of this opening order has to be viewed in conjunction with the publication of the public notice. And their ratepayers are entitled to see the fuller picture here. And what staff and DPA have included in the second whereas clause in the fourth ordering paragraph is the more complete picture. If it turns out that this is truly revenue neutral and there are no issues there, then there shouldn't be any objection to being inclusive either.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Korean.
Mr. O'Brien, it may be a revenue neutral proposal for a year, but on a quarter-to-quarter basis, which you report to your shareholder and to the market, it may not be, because January, February, March, your WNA rate will be lower for the customer, so your quarterly profit will be lower, and quarterly dividend declaration may be different or lower. So it may be overall revenue neutral, but stock market, investors, people, customers, they work on quarterly basis because you report to them on a quarterly basis. So wouldn't you agree that it is not 100% revenue neutral?
Commissioner Korea, I agree with everything you just said. That's why I said revenue neutral on a rate-making basis. For purposes of setting rates, we normalize the weather. So let's say we had a warm weather. We had a warm winter. That summer, let's say we come in for a rate case and we say, hey, we're under earning. You know, look what just happened this winter. It was so warm. I mean, we'd be laughed out of the building. That's not how you set rates. You set rates based on normalized weather. They would first normalize our sales for that warm weather and bring them up to what it would be had it been a normal winter. And then they ask whether we need new rates. So I'm talking about revenue neutral from a rate-making perspective. I'd also like to, since council said that I had misstated what was in our order, I just want to clarify. What I meant was our order by definition encompasses that because it relates to the WNA, and the order opens it up for a review of the WNA. If we want to specifically put that in there, that's fine too. I think it's already in there because the order opens up the WNA application. It's the other three that don't relate back to the WNA.
But will not, in your view, will not WNA affect ROR and ROE?
The WNA, to the extent it reduces the risk of over-earning in actual numbers, it also reduces the risk for customers that were over-earning. What I meant to say was, to the extent it reduces the company's risk of under-earning based on actual numbers, it also reduces the risk of the company over-earning from a customer's perspective. That doesn't have we don't think that has anything to do with the revenues on a weather normalized basis. If the parties want to argue that a return on equity should reflect this arguably lower risk of under-earning, even though it also affects the over-earning also, they can make that argument in this case. I mean, we certainly have arguments against that. You know, ROE is set on a peer group of companies that are similar to the company that's in for a rate case. The peer group for our companies, for both staff and DPA and the company, all have similar type mechanisms. So if you're setting an ROE based on a peer group of companies that have bill stabilization, it's already baked into your ROE. That would be our argument in the case. It's no secret. I just don't know why we're arguing it here. But like I said, that can be in this case, whether the WNA affects our risk profile and whether that should affect ROE.
But my thinking is though that if I was a customer, if I'm your customer, I would like to know the total picture. Even though we are discussing one aspect of the rate making and risk and everything, I would like to know everything so that when hearing comes up, information comes up in the newspaper, public information, then in that case, I as a customer will be happy that at least I know everything. Wouldn't you like to look at the customer's point of view also, because ultimately you earn from them?
Certainly, but just in the proper context, in the proper proceeding, not in an unrelated proceeding.
So WNA is not related to any of the financial aspects of the business at all?
No, certainly that is a proper place in this proceeding. It's the D6 effect on our ROE. It's customer growth effect on ROE. It's this third one, which I'm still not sure we all understand, the company's current rate of return effect on our ROE. It's those three things, not the WNA's effect.
Madam Acting Chair, may I?
Yes.
Thank you. So, as I'm looking at this, I think I already heard an agreement from Mr. O'Brien that the effects on ROE can be in the order with respect to the WNA. And I do find, as he noted in his opening statement, that this sentence with these other elements and parameters to be somewhat confusing. Inasmuch as I completely understand what ROE is, but I'm questioning how do I distinguish that from overall rate of return or current rate of return. These elements, when we're talking about giving this matter to a hearing examiner, I would expect if he's looking at the effects of the impact of the WNA on the ROE, some of these elements are going to be self-contained in that analysis and review anyway. So I'm getting the impression that we're kind of arguing the elements of the case itself. And I would propose, Madam Chair, that since we have an agreement from Chesapeake to include the effects of the ROE based on the implementation of the WNA, that we simply modify the order carrying those edits and move it forward.
I would agree as well, and I think that the number 4 that discusses the justness and reasonableness of the proposed rider would encompass those issues as well. And if we're going to be adding language to Chesapeake's version of this that includes a mention of the effect on ROE, which I feel that is already encompassed in this, but if that's going to be added, I would agree as well that would be acceptable.
Would you also like to include the customer growth, other aspect also, because that affects ROE and ROI?
No, not in the context of this opening docket, no, I wouldn't. I would simply say the effects of ROE as a consequence of implementing the WNA. And I would rely on the fact that the hearing examiner and the other testimony would actually cover the scope of those elements as well, as needed.
Would you like to make a motion?
I have a question for public advocate.
Okay.
Is it suitable from the argument that you have made and the staff has made to simply add and edit the Chesapeake order to include that a review of the effects on the ROE as a result of the WNA will be reviewed?
It is the commission's order, so I'm not sure what my opinion is on that, but, or
I
my
think I
opinion.
heard you make that statement. That's why I'm kind of checking if I heard correctly.
Well, obviously, we agreed with staff that these other items should be in, so if you're saying, would we agree that if we added the effect of the WNA rider on return on equity and overall rate of return, I would have to say no, because that's not what we were arguing, but it is the commission's order.
Okay. So I would move, Madam Chair, that we add or edit the Chesapeake version to include that the effects.
I
Sorry,
believe we're editing the staff, or the Chesapeake version.
Yeah.
the Chesapeake
Yeah,
version.
that's
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's-
We edit the Chesapeake version of the Chesapeake order to include that the effects on ROE will be reviewed as a consequence of implementing the WNA.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Are there any questions on the motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed, no.
Any abstentions? The motion carries 3-1.
Thank you, Madam Acting Chair and Commissioners.
Thank you. Item number 3 on the regular agenda. In the matter of the application of Silver Run Electric LLC for a certificate of public convenience and necessity to begin business as an electric transmission utility authorized to provide transmission facilities in Delaware. This was withdrawn by Silver Run, And as the company has withdrawn it, I don't believe there's any action needed.
That's correct, Madam Acting Chair. James Nutter with Parkowski, Gerke, and Swayze on behalf of the applicant, Silver Run Electric, and with me is Casey Carroll from Silver Run. He's the project engineer. We are simply here today we filed a notice on Friday indicating that we were withdrawing the motion that was put before the commission on the 25th because it is mooted by the fact that the FERC did issue an order conforming to the terms of the CPCN that was conditional issued by the commission on December 20th. But we wanted to come before the commission today to express our thanks to the commission, to commission staff, and the public advocate and all the parties through this lengthy process. I take it that the the chairman is still out celebrating the fact that FERC has finally ruled, so.
No comment, sir.
And we also wanted to make the applicant available for an update or any information that the commission may have.
Thank
So,
you also very much.
Thank you.
Anything from?
I don't think you should get into
No,
all of this,
no,
because
because
it's been
there's
withdrawn.
Yes.
no action. Okay,
Thank you all.
thank you.
One comment, Madam Acting Chair. I'd like on the record to thank FERC for kind of coming to the table in a timely manner. Thanks.
Very much so. Thank you.
All right, and that takes care of the regular agenda, and now we're on to the hearing schedule. Try to get through all of this. Okay, the first hearing on the hearing schedule is in the matter of the application of Chesapeake Utilities Corporation for approval of its environmental rider rate to be effective December the 1st, 2018. We have an exhibit log to be introduced. There are 3 exhibits. Exhibit number 1, application of Chesapeake Utilities Corporation for a change in its environmental rider rate with cover letter, certificate of service, draft public notice, proposed tariff sheets, direct testimony of Marie Cozell with attachments 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Exhibit number 2, affidavits of publication of notice of application, notice of deadline to intervene, and file written comments and notice of evidentiary hearing. Exhibit number 3, direct testimony of Connie McDowell. Move those exhibits in for the record. Do we have any problem? These have
No
to be
objection.
moved in, correct?
I believe they were just moved in.
Okay, all right.
No objection from staff.
No
Okay.
objection.
Thank you, Madam Acting Chair and Commissioners. Bill O'Brien on behalf of Chesapeake Utilities, and I have with me here today Marie Cozell, Regulatory Analyst 3 with the company. I believe the parties have waived opening statements, and if it please the Commission, I'll go ahead and call our witness. I'd like to call Marie Cozell to the stand.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Could you spell your last name?
K-O-Z as in zebra, E-L.
Would you please state your name, address, and position with Chesapeake Utilities?
My name is Marie Cozell. My business address is 500 Energy Lane, Suite 100, Dover, Delaware, 19901. And I am a Regulatory Analyst 3 for Chesapeake Utilities Corporation.
And what has been your assignment in this docket?
My assignment in this docket is to present and discuss the calculation of Chesapeake's proposed environmental rider rate to be effective for service rendered on and after December 1st, 2018.
In connection with that assignment, did you prepare and file an application for approval to implement a new rate under the company's environmental rider tariff provisions?
I did.
Have you reviewed that application?
I have.
And in connection with that assignment, have you also prepared pre-filed testimony dated November 1st, 2018, consisting of 10 pages of testimony, together with attachments MEK-1 through MEK-5 and exhibits 1 through 3?
I have.
Do you have changes or corrections that you would like to make to your direct testimony?
No changes.
Is the information set forth in the application application, the exhibits to the application, and your pre-filed testimony true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
It is.
And if I were to ask you today the questions set forth in your pre-filed testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Okay, I will note for the record that the application, which includes Marie Kozel's direct testimony, has been entered into the record evidence as Exhibit 1. Would you please summarize the company's proposal in this docket?
In this application, the company is requesting approval to increase its to maintain the company's environmental rider rate of 0.0004 per CCF effective for service rendered December 1st, 2018 through November 30th, 2019. Chesapeake incurred $8,822.60 of actual environmental expenses during the environmental cost year ending September 30th, 2018, which consisted of consulting, legal, and other expenses related to the Seaford Town gas site. The environmental cost recovery mechanism calls for a 5-year amortization of costs offset by an imputed deferred tax benefit. This amount is then grossed up to account for the Delaware PSC assessment of 0.03%. For this 4th year of cost recovery, the company anticipates to recover approximately $32,896.20, which includes the amortized recovery from the first 4 cost years, less 4 cost years, less the amount that was over-collected in the first recovery year, under-collected in the second recovery year, and over-collected in the third recovery year. The rate is then calculated by dividing this net recovery amount by the projected firm sales for the recovery year ended November 31st, 2019, which is $8,867,568 MCF, resulting in a rate of 0.004 MCF, or 0.0004 CCF. As a result of the proposed rate, there's no change on average residential heating customers using 700 CCF per year.
Ms. Kozel, have you had a chance to review the pre-filed testimony of Connie McDowell?
Yes, I have.
Do you disagree with any of her statements or recommendations?
No, I do not.
Ms. Kozel's available for cross.
No cross from staff.
No questions.
We have no further witnesses. I mean, I probably should have explained before I put Ms. Kozel on the stand that this is our annual environmental rate filing based on the money we spent during the year that's analyzed. There'll be no change in what we have in effect right now for the environmental rate rider.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Acting Chair. Staff calls as a witness Connie McDowell and asks that she be sworn.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address of your employer, please.
Connie S. McDowell, and I'm employed by the Delaware Public Service Commission, and my work address is 861 Silver Lake Boulevard, Suite 100, Dover, Delaware.
And what is your position with the commission, and how long have you been employed?
I'm the Senior Regulatory Policy Administrator, and I've been employed with the commission for over 28 years.
And could you please describe your role in this proceeding?
I am the case manager in this proceeding.
And in that role, have you prepared direct testimony?
Yes, I have.
And do you have any changes or corrections to that testimony?
Yes, I do have one. On page 6 of my testimony, line 18, the rate should be $0.0004 per CCF. I omitted one of the zeros.
Could you please summarize your testimony, your direct testimony?
Sure. On November 1st, 2018, Chesapeake Utilities Corporation filed an application with the commission seeking approval of its environmental rider rate to be effective December 1/2018. The company was seeking to continue its rate of $0.0004 per CCF for all firm delivery service customers. I reviewed the application, pre-filed testimony, and schedules the invoices that Chesapeake incurred last year for accuracy and compliance with, and it's the rider mechanism that was approved in PSC Order 4104 and PSC Docket 9573. The rider mechanism is set up to permit Chesapeake to recover costs associated with the investigation, testing, monitoring, soil and/or groundwater remediation, land acquisition, and legal costs of former manufactured gas plant sites, disposal sites, or any site where material may have migrated from earlier operations of these manufactured gas plant sites. The costs incurred were for the Seaford Town gas site, which was a former coal gas plant site, and the rider mechanism is set up for the company to recover costs over a 5-year period. This creates a sharing mechanism where the company pays the carrying costs and customers pay for those costs over a 5-year period.
And do you have a recommendation in this proceeding?
Yes, I do. Staff recommends that the commission approve the company's request to continue its ER rate of $0.0004 per CCF for all firm delivery customers.
Do you have anything else to add to this proceeding?
No, I do not.
Ms. McDowell is available for cross-examination.
No questions.
Questions from the commission? No questions? What's your pleasure? Yep.
Madam Chair, I move that the commission adopt order number 9350 as submitted.
I second it.
Any questions on the motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The second hearing is in the matter of request for approval of Delmarva Power and Light Company's 2018-2019 standard offer service rates, procurement cost adjustment, and RARM filing. I think we have Mr. Good, oh, we don't have Mr. Goodman for DP&F.
Thank you, Madam Acting Chair and Commissioners. Lindsay Orr on behalf of Delmarva Power. This is Delmarva's annual application to establish the electric standard offer service rates for the period of June 1st, 2018 through May 31st, 2019. This includes establishing tariff rates for standard offer service supply, the procurement cost adjustment, and the reasonable allowance for retail margin. It is my understanding that the parties are in agreement as to proposed order number 9346. Delmarva thanks the other parties for their efforts in this docket and thanks staff for preparing proposed order number 9346 and allowing Delmarva the opportunity to comment. It is Delmarva's position that order number 9346 should be approved. I have one witness that will provide testimony. May he be sworn in?
Robert J. Coan, C-O-A-N.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name for the record.
Robert J. Coan.
By whom are you employed?
PHI Service Company, primarily on behalf of Delmarva Power.
And in what capacity?
Senior Rate Analyst.
How long have you been in this position?
6 years in this specific position, but I've been with the company for 38 years, doing mostly utility accounting.
What is your educational background?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in accounting from the University of Delaware.
Were you involved in the preparation of the filing in this docket that was submitted to the Commission on March 22nd, 2018?
Yes, I am primarily responsible for this filing.
Can you briefly explain the purpose of this filing?
The purpose of this filing is to establish the electric standard offer service rates for the period June 1st, 2018 through May 31st, 2019. This includes establishing tariff rates for standard offer service supply, the procurement cost adjustment, and the reasonable allowance for retail margin. The revised rates include estimates for the projected period, plus prior period true-ups for any over or under recovered balances.
What was the filing composed of?
The filing was composed of revised tariff sheets, PCA calculations, SOS supply rate calculations, bill impacts, RARM rate calculation, and supporting work papers.
Was the methodology consistent with prior years?
Yes.
In connection with this filing, did you schedule a meeting with PSC staff and DPA to review the documents associated with the filing?
Yes, we held a technical conference at a company location on May 15th, 2018, and later answered both formal and informal discovery questions.
Did PSC staff or DPA propose any adjustments based on the documentation included in the filing?
Yes.
Are you in agreement with the language indicated in the proposed order?
Yes.
How do you anticipate incorporating the proposed adjustments?
Per the proposed order number 9346, staff and the company agree on various adjustments which will be included in the upcoming 2019 filing.
Was notice of this application published as required by order number 9205?
Yes, on May 3rd, 2018 and May 4th, 2018.
Were affidavits of publication filed with the Delaware Public Service Commission?
Yes, on May 7th, 2018.
Has staff determined that the commission should approve as final the rates that went into effect on a temporary basis on June 1st, 2018?
Yes, they have.
And what is the bill impact to customers as a result of this filing?
A typical residential customer using 840 kilowatt hours per month on average saw a decrease of approximately $4.93 per month, which is a 4.16% decrease when including the delivery and supply portions of the bill.
Do you have any further testimony at this time?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Cohen is available for cross-examination.
No questions from staff.
No questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Willard, I believe you're up.
Yes, the staff also has a couple of witnesses to present. I would call first Shona Marshall.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And for the record, Ms. Marshall, please state your name and address.
My name is Shauna Marshall. The business address is 861 Silver Lake Boulevard, Suite 100, Dover, Delaware.
And who is your current employer and what is your position title?
I am a public utility analyst with the Delaware Public Service Commission.
What is this particular proceeding for?
On March 22nd, 2018, Delmarva filed the application for approval of the 2018 Standard Offer Service Rates, or SOS, including the Procurement Cost Adjustment, or PCA, and Reasonable Allowance for Retail Margin, or RARM. According to the company's worksheet, the annual average monthly bill for a residential customer using 840 kilowatt hours will be decreased by approximately $4.93, or 4.16%. The commission approved the proposed rates on a temporary basis with proration, subject to refund in order number 9205, dated April 24, 2018.
Was public notice properly posted, and did you receive any public comments pertaining to this application?
Yes, the notice was published on May 3rd, 2018 in the Delaware State News and May 4th, 2018 in the News Journal. Staff did not receive any petitions for intervention or public comments or objections by the deadline.
What was your role in docket number 180179?
I attended the technical review workshop pertaining to all aspects of the filing hosted by the company, and I reviewed the PCA rate and the SOS fixed bid price component for this filing. The WARM was reviewed by Demi Kohuhar.
Easy for you to say. What was the nature of your review?
I reviewed the calculations and work papers related to the PCA true-up for the period of January 2017 through December 2017. I also reviewed the SOS fixed price calculations and components of the winning tranche bids, as well as the forecasted megawatt hours to verify the full requirement cost by the summer and winter seasons, rate class, and forecasted billing requirements.
And what is your analysis of the calculations in this application?
A discrepancy in the hourly price service, or HPS WARM revenue, identified an allocation error in regards to the revenues that should have been allocated to the PCA transmission for the HPS customer class in 2017. A credit adjustment of $63,015.63 for the 2018 HPS PCA transmission true-up will be made in the 2019 annual filing. I found no substantive errors in the calculation of the SOS fixed price components. The fixed price component of the rate is consistent with the winning bid prices that were reported by the Commission's consultant, Liberty Consulting.
What are your recommendations for the commission?
Because Delmarva will be making the necessary adjustments in the 2019 annual filing, and staff did not find any reasons to recommend denial of cost recovery, staff respectfully recommends that the commission approve as final the rates that went into effect on a temporary basis on June 1st, 2018, with proration for the period from June 1st, 2018 to May 31st, 2019.
Do you believe your recommendations will result in rates that are just and reasonable and in the public interest?
Yes, I do. Staff found the rates and tariff changes to be consistent with previous orders.
Does this conclude your testimony?
Yes.
And Ms. Marshall's available for cross-examination.
No questions.
No questions.
Thank you.
We
All
would
right.
also call Dimitar to the stand. And I ask him to please give his name and pronunciation.
Madam Acting Chair, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Dimitar, Dimitar Kozhuharov, Kozhuharov. My business address is 861 Silver Lake, Dover, Delaware.
Who's your current employer and what's your position title?
Please raise your right hand.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Now that we know you're going to tell the truth, let's give us your name and address once again, please.
One more time. My name is Dimitar Kozhuharov. My business address is 861 Silver Lake Boulevard, Dover, Delaware.
And what is your current employer and your position title?
I'm currently employed by the Delaware Public Service Commission as a public utility analyst.
And what was your role in docket number 18-0179?
I reviewed the supporting documents pertaining to the reasonable allowance for retail margin and supporting calculations for the round factor.
And what was the nature of your review?
I was responsible only for the round part of the filing, so I reviewed the worksheets pertaining to the calculation of the RAM and the supporting invoices related to the incremental costs.
Can you briefly describe exactly what the RARM is?
In simple terms, the standard offer service provider, which is Delmarva, is allowed to recover some of its expenses that they incur as a standard offer service provider, like cash working capital, uncollectible expenses that are related to the supply, and a profit margin.
What did you find as part of your analysis?
I did not find any errors in the calculation of the round factor, which decreased by 19.61% from the current factor. The new round factor is 0.002443 cents, which is a decrease of 0.000596 cents. Through discovery, the Delmarva staff and PSC staff agreed to several adjustments. I'll quickly list them. $63,015.63 worth of adjustments will be added to the hourly price PCA transmission cost revenue calculation for 2018. Further, $12,993.18 of RAM interest will be adjusted, and then a net under recovery adjustment of $4,474.63 will be added to the HPS RAM. All of these adjustments will be reflected in the 2019 Standard Offer Service PCA RAM filing.
Did you find any other discrepancies in the filing beyond those you just addressed?
I found no other discrepancies in the filing beyond those that were effectively addressed through the discovery process, during which we had a great communication with Delmarva, and it was truly a collaborative effort.
And what are your recommendations to the commission?
I respectfully recommend that the commission approves as final the standard offer service rate, which includes, among other things, the RAM factor that went into effect on a temporary basis on June 1st, 2018, with proration period from June 1st, 2018 to May 31st, 2019.
And do you believe your recommendation will result in just and reasonable rates that will be in the public interest?
Yes, I do.
Does this conclude your testimony?
Yes.
Okay, Jimmy is available for cross-examination.
No questions.
No questions.
Thank you. Ms. Iuri?
The public advocate has no witnesses. We support the application and the proposed form of order. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the commissioners?
May I ask one additional question, Madam Acting Chair Conaway? Staff requested that I ask that exhibits be introduced into evidence. I don't believe we designated any exhibits, but for purposes of clarity of the record, I would just ask that the application and affidavits of publication be considered part of the record.
No objection.
No objection.
Okay, they're part of the record.
Thank you.
All right. Commissioners, you have before you proposed order number 9346. Your pleasure, please.
Move we adopt order number 9346.
Seconded.
Any questions on the motion? All those in favor?
We have one more thing to add. The staff should introduce
Oh,
the
Demi.
memos of Shona Marshall and Demi into the record
Okay.
as
Sorry.
exhibits.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, all right. No questions on the motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any objections? Okay. Now we're on to number 3.
Thank you, Madam Acting Chair Conaway and Commissioners. Lindsay Orr again on behalf of Delmarva Power. This is Delmarva's annual application to revise the electric tariff rates for the Renewable Portfolio Standards Charge for the period of June 1st, 2018 through May 31st, 2019. It is my understanding that the parties are in agreement as to proposed order number 9352. Delmarva thanks the other parties for their efforts in this docket and thanks staff for preparing the proposed order and allowing Delmarva the opportunity to comment. It is Delmarva's position that order number 9352 should be approved. And to get the housekeeping out of the way up front, I would ask that Delmarva's application and the affidavits of publication, as well as staff's memo, be entered into evidence.
Any objections?
Staff has no objections.
No objection.
So ordered.
Thank you. I have one witness that will provide testimony. May he be sworn in?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name for the record.
Robert J. Cohen,
By whom are you employed?
PHI Service Company, primarily on behalf of Delmarva Power,
And in what capacity?
as a senior rate analyst.
How long have you been in this position?
6 years in this specific position, but I've been with the family of companies for 38 years, doing mostly utility accounting.
What is your educational background?
I hold a Bachelor of Science in Accounting from the University of Delaware.
Were you involved in the preparation of the filing in this docket that was submitted to the Commission on March 22nd, 2018?
Yes, I am primarily responsible for this filing.
Can you briefly explain the purpose of this filing?
The purpose of this filing is to revise the electric tariff rates for the Renewable Portfolio Standards Charge for the period of June 1st, 2018 through May 31st, 2019. The revised rates include estimates for the projected period plus prior period true-ups for over or under recovered balances.
What was the filing composed of?
The filing was composed of revised tariff sheets, RPS charge calculations, rate change percentage, and supporting work papers.
Was the methodology consistent with prior years?
Yes.
In connection with this filing, did you schedule a meeting with PSC staff and DPA to review the documents associated with the filing?
Yes, we held a technical conference at a company location on May 15th, 2018, and later answered both formal and informal discovery questions.
Did PSC staff or DPA have any issues with the documentation included in the filing?
No, neither staff nor DPA has indicated that they found any discrepancies.
Was notice of this application published as required by Order Number 9206?
Yes, on May 3rd, 2018 and May 4th, 2018.
Were affidavits of publication filed with the Delaware PSC?
Yes, on May 7th, 2018.
Has staff determined that the Commission should approve as final the rates that went into effect on a temporary basis on June 1st, 2018?
Yes.
What is the bill impact to customers as a result of this filing?
A typical residential customer using 840 kilowatt hours per month on average saw an increase of approximately 25 cents per month.
Do you have any further testimony at this time?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Cohen is available for cross-examination.
Staff has no questions.
No questions.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh for staff, please.
Thank you, Madam Acting Chair. Staff would call Ms. Pamela Knotts and ask that she be sworn.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
As my Catholic school nuns used to say, would you like to share that with the rest of the class?
Could you please state your name and address, please?
My name is Pamela Knotts. My business address is 861 Silver Lake Boulevard, Suite 100, Dover, Delaware.
And who is your current employer, and what is your position title?
I'm employed by the Delaware Public Service Commission as a regulatory policy administrator.
What is your role in docket number 18-0180?
I review the components and the calculations for the Renewable Portfolio Standard, or RPS, rate.
And what is this particular proceeding for?
On March 22nd, 2018, Delmarva filed an application for approval of the 2018 RPS rate charge. According to the company's tariff, the rate is 0.004657 per kilowatt hour. The average monthly bill for a residential customer using 840 kilowatt hours would be increased by approximately 25 cents. The Commission approved the proposed rates on a temporary basis with proration, subject to refund, in Order Number 9206, dated April 24th, 2018.
And did you receive any public comments with regard to this proceeding?
We received 6 public comments opposing the increase.
What was the nature of your review?
I reviewed the calculations, invoices, and worksheets comprising the derivation of the RPS rate. As part of the RPS rate, I reviewed the recovery of the auction and the administrative costs for the 2017 SREC procurement program, which included the Sustainable Energy Utility, or the SEU, and its contract administrator's cost for the period January 2017 through December 2017. Pursuant to Order Number 8450, dated September 10, 2013, in docket number 12-526, the Commission approved the 2013 SREC procurement program and stated Delmarva will be required to justify any SEU-related cost above what ratepayers would have paid had Delmarva managed the solicitation itself, and had Delmarva not used the SEU as a contractual intermediary. Staff continues to use this as a benchmark for cost recovery. This is to ensure that costs related to the SEU's involvement do not exceed the costs that Delmarva would have incurred had it administered the contracts itself. If the SEU exceeded them, Delmarva would have to justify any incremental costs.
And what did you find as part of your analysis?
After reviewing a significant amount of documentation for accuracy and compliance with prior commission orders, I found no substantive errors. I also reviewed the SEU and its administrative contractors' costs for the 2017 SREC procurement program, and according to the document titled Analysis of Administrative Costs for Delmarva Power and Light Company SREC Procurement Program, January through December 2017, Delmarva estimated the cost for Delmarva to administer the SREC program contracts would result in costs approximately 15% higher than the actual SEU in-climb administrative costs.
What are your recommendations?
Staff respectfully recommends that the Commission approve as final the RPS rate that went into effect on a temporary basis on June 1st, 2018 with proration for the period from June 1st, 2018 to May 31st, 2019.
You believe that your recommendation will result in rates that are just and reasonable and in the public interest?
Yes, I do.
Does this conclude your testimony?
Yes, it does.
Ms. Knotts is available for questions, cross-examination.
No questions.
No questions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Iuri.
Thank you, Madam Acting Chair. The Public Advocate has no witnesses. We support the company's application and the proposed form of order. Thank you.
All right, any questions from the commissioners?
Just one quick question. So what was allowed and authorized by the commission last year, moving forward to this period, hasn't changed. You're just affirming that that continues.
That's correct. We're asking the Commission to put these rates as, or consider them as final rates versus temporary rates, which was currently in effect.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Any other questions? We have before you order number 9352.
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the order number 9352 as submitted.
I second.
Any questions on the motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And now on to number 4. Number 4 is in the matter of the request for proposals and the review and approval of any proposed contracts for the purchase of wind-generated renewable energy credits by Delmarva Power and Light Company. And this time we do have Mr. Goodwin for DP&A.
Yes, you do. Thank you. Good to see you all again. Second time I'm up here today. I'll just give you a quick background, since I failed to do that when we started our first presentation, and this is actually a hearing. So you'll recall that a few years ago we had this merger where Delmarva became part of the Exelon group. And in that settlement, which you approved, that was reached amongst the parties, Delmarva Power agreed to do 3 RFPs, 3 tranches, as we say, for wind-generated renewable energy credits. We agreed to do them on a certain timeline. And everyone agreed that, there are always many factors that you look at, but the primary factor would be price. I think you'll recall that we did our first RFP, which unfortunately did not result in a contract. You're here today to hear about the results of our second tranche RFP, which did result in a contract. And we were very careful to size this so that if a freeze of the RPS annual increases is declared, we will not be left oversubscribed. Our customers will not have anything they need to pay for that they can't use. That was well covered in the memorandum filed by staff. We will still have 18 to 19%, depending on whose calculation, whether staff's or ours, of RECs that even if you declared a freeze, we'd still have to go out and purchase more for the current rate. And so we are here today to just put the testimony on the record that you will need to hopefully make your decision. Thanks to the good work done by your staff, a very nice memorandum and recommendation. That, you know, we're not going to go over all those details. I assume that will be entered into evidence, and I think that will be very helpful to you in understanding the whole background of this. If you don't mind, I'd like to start just by where we usually end, but I think it's a little smoother, that the exhibits we will ask to be entered into evidence, and probably proper to ask at the end, will be the affidavits of publication that were publication of this proceeding was put in the Delaware News Journal and the Delaware State News. And then we would ask that our application package, which includes the application itself, and also included and incorporated into that is the testimony of Mr. Jacoby, who you'll hear from today. And there was also a third-party report from a consulting group, Pace, or Siemens, in there as well. So we ask that those two items be placed into evidence at the end of this proceeding. And with that, if we could swear in Delmarva's witness.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
And you know, if staff doesn't mind, Delmarva would also very much like staff's memorandum to be entered into evidence as well. It's a, like I said before, it's a nice piece, and it's an important part of this. And I know it's already been filed, so we would like that entered as well. I don't want to do Mr. Walsh's job for him, though. But, in any event, Mr. Jacoby, would you state your name for the record one more time?
James Jacoby.
Okay, and for whom do you work and what's your job title, Mr. Jacoby?
I work for Pepco Holdings, Inc. in our energy acquisition group with responsibilities for the supply of natural gas and renewables for the state of Delaware, Delmarva Power.
You manage Delmarva's renewable portfolio, including RECs, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And did you file any pre-filed testimony in this case?
Yes, I did.
All right, and do you have any changes to that pre-filed testimony today?
No, I do not.
Okay. If you were asked the same questions today that you were asked in your pre-filed testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Okay. And do you adopt your testimony today for the record?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do you believe that the 10-year renewable energy credit purchase contract being considered for approval today by the commission is in the public interest?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and would you just briefly explain why you believe approval of this proposed contract would be in the public interest?
Sure. Delmarva was required to conduct this RFP for wind rec credits as a result of the merger commitment from the merger of Exelon and Delmarva several years ago. This is the second tranche out of 3 that was required in that merger commitment. It required that we solicited suppliers to provide the wind rec equivalents of a 40 megawatt generation facility. The process was begun in early 2018. In March and April, we engaged a third-party consulting firm, Pace Siemens, to help us as the independent evaluator of the process. Their role was to make sure that the RFP was conducted in a fair and competitive manner and report out to the commission. They also provided their evaluation of the pricing that was received, as well as their professional opinion regarding the facilities that were proposed by the various bidders in the RFP. We received a total of 3 responses, 3 bidders that provided 16 different scenarios for our consideration. The term of the offers range from 10 to 15 years in length. And each of the segments that was proposed was for 40 megawatts of wind capacity. As a result of the evaluation process, one bidder stood out. That was Avangrid. They had an existing facility located in North Carolina by the name of Desert Wind in Pascagoula County, North Carolina. It's right on the border. I apologize if I butchered the pronunciation. But it is an existing facility. We would be contracting for about 20% of its total capacity. And the pricing that was proposed was $8.10 per rec. Of note is this price is for recs only. The previous contracts that we've entered into also included energy, but that was not the case this time. We are contracting solely for recs. PACE evaluated that price versus their view of the forward market, and they showed a slight savings over the forward curve, and they have recommended the acceptance of the pricing as competitive. They also recommended that the process was fair and comprehensive. Beyond the fact that the pricing was competitive, we have an existing facility, so there's no development risk. That's always an issue when you have proposed facilities, whether or not the facility will actually get built. There's also risk for timing on whether or not the facility will be brought online at the promised time. So both of those boxes were checked in this situation. We have a pre-existing facility. We have attractive pricing. And thirdly, the counterparty was able to provide a parental guarantee which protects the company and its customers in the event of any kind of default by the supplier. As I noted, the fact that they were a creditworthy counterparty was a significant issue that we dealt with in Tranche 1 and was one of the reasons that we were unable to complete a contract in Tranche 1. In Tranche 2, we focused on the creditworthiness of the counterparty, and were able to secure the parental guarantee. As Todd mentioned previously, this contract has been sized so that we do not have any issues in the event of a RPS freeze is put in place. My evaluation showed that even with the addition of this contract in compliance year 1920, we would still have to procure about 18% of our total requirements in the spot market. Another way of saying that is even without this contract, we will have to buy other recs. There's no possibility that we're going to have too many recs on hand in the event a freeze is declared. In my analysis, I also prepared several scenarios that looked at the cases if a freeze was put into effect, if it was not, and those results resulted in the minimum case being 18% unhedged at a minimum. And the upper bound of that, in some cases, we were in excess of 50% unhedged at the end of the 10-year period. But in no case was there less than an 18% unhedged position for the company. The last thing that I would mention is that the contracts and the process, as well as PACE's reports, have been reviewed by the staff, and they have issued their own memorandum in support of the proposal as well, and we would ask that you would approve the contract today.
quick follow-up questions, Mr. Jacoby. That $8.10 price per renewable energy credit, that is fixed over the entire 10-year term, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, so our customers are not subjected to any potential rec price increases over the life of that contract?
That is correct. There's no escalation in the contract.
Okay. I don't have any further questions for Mr. Jacoby at this time.
Anybody?
Yes. Madam Acting Chair, Tom Walsh, Deputy Attorney General, on behalf of staff. I do have a couple of questions for Mr. Jacoby. Mr. Jacoby, would you please clarify, is the EAPA for an estimated total of 103,808 recs, or for exactly 103,808? Yeah. Is it an estimated total, or is it exactly?
That is the exact annual quantity under the contract.
Okay. And second question, would that number be used to determine replacement recs if required?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions.
Ms. Ivory, you have questions?
Thank you, Madam Acting Chair. I just have a couple. Mr. Jacoby, what is the current spot price for recs?
Approximately $6.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Tweedy, no questions? All right.
We would then ask that the items that I asked you about prior, for identification, be entered into the record as exhibits, if that's acceptable.
Are there any objections?
No objections. That includes staff's
Yes,
memorandum by
yes.
Ms. Knotts. Thank you.
No objection.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Walsh for staff, please.
Thank you, Madam Acting Chair. Staff calls Ms. Knotts and asks that she be sworn.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your name and address.
My name is Pamela Knotts. My business address is 861 Silver Lake Boulevard, Suite 100, Dover, Delaware.
And who is your current employer, and what is your position title?
I'm employed by the Delaware Public Service Commission as a regulatory policy administrator.
And what is your role in this docket, which is number 16-1031?
I reviewed the application requesting approval of the Environmental Attribute Purchase Agreement or contract for the 103,808 wind renewable energy credits or RECs sourced from Avangrid Renewables Desert Wind Facility located in Pasquotank County, North Carolina.
You did it better.
Yeah, that was better.
What is the basis for the request in this proceeding?
On December 21st, 2018, Delmarva filed a request for approval of the Tranche 2 request for proposals for the purchase of wind generator RECs. And the company provided direct testimony from Mr. Jacoby and also a report from Pace Global titled Third-Party Evaluator Report Delmarva Solicitation for Wind RECs.
And did you receive any public comments regarding this application?
Yes, staff received one public comment.
Could you tell the Commission the nature of your review?
I reviewed the application with the supporting documents and also the Environmental Attribute Purchase Agreement, or the EAPA, to determine if it complied with the Order 8746, Paragraph 84, as so stated about the amended merger settlement agreement and prior commission orders, as well as to determine if this contract would leave Delmarva in a fully hedged position for RECs. I also reviewed the information Pace provided on the forward price curve for RECs, among other things.
What did you find as part of your analysis?
My review indicated that Delmarva's proposed EAPA was awarded to the bidder with the lowest bid price. The price of $8.10 is a fixed price per REC for 10 years for 103,808 RECs. In Pace's evaluation, the winning bid resulted in a net present value savings to Delmarva's customers of 0.86 cents per rec over the proposed contract term and remains below the projected rec average market price through the 10-year term. I found that the proposed contract comported with prior commission orders. I also conducted my own analysis on Delmarva's hedge position on RECs and whether Delmarva would be hedged completely if this contract is approved for compliance year 2018. In my analysis, I assumed no load growth and a 4-year average number of RECs generated from Delmarva's current wind contracts, and I applied a 4-year average for the bloom offsets and added this proposed contract of 103,808 RECs. In the potential event of a freeze of the RPS in compliance year 2018, Delmarva would still need to purchase RECs to fulfill its RPS compliance obligation for that compliance year, which concurred with Mr. Jacoby's findings.
What are your recommendations?
Staff respectfully recommends that the Commission approve the proposed contract known as the Environmental Attribute Purchase Agreement for the 103,808 wind RECs at a price of $810 per REC for 10 years from Avangrid Renewables Desert Wind Facility with a start date of June 2019.
Do you believe that your recommendation will result in rates that are just and reasonable and in the public interest?
Yes, I do, because the Environmental Attribute Purchase Agreement between Avangrid Renewables and Delmarva comports with prior commission orders and reportedly is at a price that is below market for 10 years and will not create an overhedged position for Delmarva in the fulfillment of RECs for the compliance year 2018.
And just to clarify, I had asked you your recommendation. Could you tell us again the price per rec for 10 years?
Sorry, did I say $810? Excuse me, I'm sorry. I apologize.
It's close.
$8.10 per rec. Let me correct myself.
Sounds far more reasonable.
Yes, far more reasonable.
Does this conclude your testimony?
Yes, it does.
Ms. Knotts is available for questions, cross-examination, and may I also note, so I don't forget, ask that we move into evidence the public comments of Gary Myers. I don't know if that was swept into Mr. Goodman's recitation,
think it was.
but he had filed the public comment, and I think that should become part of the record.
Let's do Mr. Myers' comments first, so ordered, and now we'll go to any questions of Ms. Knotts.
No questions.
Any questions of Ms. Knotts?
I thought I was going to get to fulfill one of my bucket lists and get to cross-examine Ms. Knotts about a math error, because that doesn't happen very often.
No, I know.
But they took it away from me, so I think she's right on that $8.10. So thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to correct myself.
Mr. Tweedy, any questions?
No questions.
All right, now we have Ms. Iori from the DPA.
The DPA has no witnesses, and we support the proposed form of order.
Thank you. Mr. Tweedy from DENREC.
Thank you, Madam Acting Chair. We just have one witness who would ask to be sworn.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Could you please state your name and place of work for the record?
My name's Thomas Noyes. I'm Principal Planner for Utility Policy, the DENREC Division of Climate Coastal Energy. Our office is at 100 West Water Street in Dover.
And how long have you worked at DENREC?
7 years now.
And what are your duties at DENREC?
I'm the division's Renewable Energy Policy Lead, which includes RPS planning, staffing the Renewable Energy Task Force, and occasionally appearing before the Commission.
And you've offered testimony before this commission before?
Yes, on a variety of dockets involving renewable energy, related policy matters, and the Exelon merger.
And what is the purpose of your testimony today?
The purpose of my brief testimony is to describe how the proposed contract meets the requirements of the wind RFP provision in the Exelon settlement and is in the public interest.
And did DENREC support the amended settlement agreement in the Exelon acquisition doc?
Yes.
And did DENREC support the wind RFP provision in the settlement?
Yes, in my testimony, supplemental testimony dated March 20th, 2014, I said the wind RFP provision in paragraph 84 of the amended settlement agreement will help stimulate the market for wind power projects, provide a measure of long-term price stability, and protect ratepayers from the prospect of buying spot market RECs in a market where demand could exceed supply.
Did the Renewable Energy Task Force review the RFP?
Yes. Paragraph 84 provides for Delmarva Power to file a wind RFP, quote, with the concurrence of the Renewable Energy Task Force, end quote. The task force discussed the RFP at its meeting of June 12, 2018, and voted to approve the RFP unanimously.
Are the terms of this proposed contract consistent with the public interest?
Yes. First, in general terms, the use of competitive long-term contracts sends a market signal encouraging the development of new supply and makes it easier for developers and operators to raise capital for new projects. Second, the 10-year price of $8.10 provides Delmarva Power with a stable price well below the price of previous long-term contracts for wind energy RECs. Third, the contract hedges Delmarva Power's exposure to spot market RECs in a potentially unfavorable market. As Delmarva noted in the PACE report filed with its application, the fixed price looks good in light of a forecast increase in market price for RECs.
Does DENREC support the proposed contract?
Yes, DENREC supports the contract as consistent with the public interest and respectfully recommends the Commission approval.
Does that conclude your testimony?
Yes, it does.
I have no further questions.
Anybody have any questions, Mr. Noyes?
Delmarva does not.
No questions.
No questions.
Commissioners, questions?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. So, as I'm listening to the conversation, does this mean that the contract carries language that the requisition is subject to suspension if a freeze is declared?
Commissioner Gray, it does not, and there are a couple reasons for that. One, if a freeze is declared, let's say it's declared this year, right? The worst case scenario as far as potentially having too many RECs. The study done, the analysis done by Mr. Jacoby, and as we heard, thoroughly checked and redone by your staff, specifically Ms. Knotts, shows that in that scenario, if you were to declare a freeze, we would not be oversubscribed under this contract. In fact, even with a freeze, this contract, adding this contract to the portfolio would not even give us the amount of RECs we need. We'd still have to go out and buy approximately 18 to 19% of our RECs in addition, just to meet the frozen level. The legislation, and I can give you a citation, if you'll give me 1 second. I don't have it sitting in front of me, but I do have it here. Probably in the bottom of all my papers. So the legislation I'm referring to, Title 26 of the Delaware Code, Section 354J, says that in the event of a freeze, the minimum cumulative percentage from eligible energy resources shall remain at the percentage for the year in which the freeze is instituted. So if a freeze were declared this year, it would merely mean that next year we wouldn't have a percentage increase. The current cumulative percentage, meaning the percentage of RECs and SRECs we have to purchase in relation to our load of eligible customers, is 19%. So if a freeze is declared this year, it wouldn't go up at all next year. It would remain at 19%. And at 19%, adding this to our portfolio fits right in there and still requires us to go out and purchase some spot market RECs. And something that I think is important to note, I don't even know if we could get people to bid on a contract that said, hey, we could terminate this out of nowhere if someone calls a freeze. I can only imagine that we would either get no bids at all, or the amount of risk that would have to be priced into this, we'd have recs, incredibly high. So that's why we were very careful to make sure that we didn't ask for bids on anything more than we could easily fit into our portfolio in the case of a freeze, because we knew you would ask that question, and it's an important question.
Okay. So as my calculations showed that over 10 years, this is about an $8.5 million commitment in terms of monetary contractual value. So if the projected wind rec prices increase over the 10 years, does this contract protect the $8.10 price?
Yes, it is a fixed price, and that was a very important concept to us that was offered. Not only was it the lowest price, but it was fixed, and we think that's pretty important, because you do see contracts out there with escalators, and that's a pretty bad scenario if the prices are in the contract are going up, and so
Okay.
we
No
don't
further-
accept those.
Thank you very much. No further questions, Madam Chair.
No other questions? All right, we have before us order number 9353.
So I move that we adopt order number 9353.
I second.
Any questions on the motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you all so very much.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public who would like to make comment?
Thank you.
Well then, Mr. Director, it's yours.
Thank you, Madam Acting Chair and Commissioners. I have a very important announcement. The staff would like to thank you and Commissioner Correa for buying us lunch today.
You're very welcome.
It was for staff only. Sorry, Todd. The next commission meeting is on March 19th, 2019, here in the same meeting room. Thank you all very much for your considerations.
All right, nothing else to come before us?